The year is 586 BC. Jerusalem is in ruins. The city's walls are broken, its people scattered. Generations of warnings, now just faint memories. How could this happen? A world once so full of promise, now covered in shadows. For centuries, the world seemed silent. Empires rose and fell. Great civilizations thrived and crumbled. People searched for meaning in a world filled with questions. Do you remember when the world felt connected to something more? But no one could recall. And yet, deep down, there was a sense that something was coming. Even in their struggles, the people were never forgotten. I do not change, says the Lord. Return to me, and I will return to you. A promise stood firm, a chance to come back to something greater. In the stillness of the night, the cry of a newborn shattered the silence. In a humble stable, on a straw-covered floor, ancient promises came alive. A child was born in a simple stable. His first cries broke through the silence of the world. This was no ordinary child. His birth was like a spark of light in the darkness. People began to wonder, could this child be the one to change everything? The wise men were curious. The shepherds dared to hope. Could this baby, born in such humble circumstances, really bring the answers they were waiting for? It didn't seem likely. A child in a manger? Surely a leader would arrive with power, with armies. But maybe this was exactly what the world needed. Who is this child? He grew up in an ordinary town, learning the ways of life like anyone else. But there was something different about him. He taught people to see the world differently, to live with purpose. "Follow me," he said. And they did. Who is this man? He became a turning point in history, a light for those who felt lost, an inspiration for those who had none. He offered hope, love, and the possibility of a new way forward. His life changed the world. His message still echoes today. He is more than a teacher. He is more than a man. He is the one who changes everything. He is Jesus.
So I don't know what it's like in your home over Christmas time, but in our house, my son gets to stay up a bit later because there's no school the next day. As a result, we love to, after dinner, cuddle together on the couch and pop on a movie. So the other day, as we were doing this, I showed my son the movie The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Why? Because I absolutely loved The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe as a little kid, as I read it being a book. But ultimately what I wanted was, I just wanted to connect my son to the writings of C.S. Lewis. And I wanted to expose my son to some of the wisdom that C.S. Lewis brings to the conversation of life. So we did. We sat down, popped on the movie. And as we're busy watching the movie, this scene comes up where Lucy walks through the wardrobe and steps out into the cold and the snow. Ultimately, she's stepping out into Narnia. And she comes into contact with a character by the name of Mr. Tumnus. And in their exchange, Mr. Tumnus said something that hit home for me. Mr. Tumnus goes on to say, it's always winter, but never Christmas. It's always winter, but never Christmas. In fact, he goes on to say to Lucy, we haven't had Christmas for 100 years. And she's like, just winter, no Christmas. For 100 years, no Christmas. And it like shatters her little world. But as I was listening to these words of Lewis through Mr. Tumnus, it made me think of my own life. Made me think of the moments and the seasons that have felt like exactly that. Just winter, but never Christmas. Just winter, but never Christmas. Times where it felt like absolutely everything was falling apart. My work, my health, my friendships, even at times my marriage, where I doubted my ability to care and provide for my family the way that I should. In all of this winter, where was the Christmas? In other words, where was hope? Where was breakthrough? Now, I understand that we live in the southern hemisphere here in South Africa and that we don't have winter during our Christmas time, but this metaphor lands so beautifully and speaks so beautifully in our lives, doesn't it? That's how it feels sometimes, isn't it? Always winter, never Christmas. Like the world is just one giant, never-ending winter. No warmth, no light, just endless struggles. It's like Mr. Tumnus said, always winter, but never Christmas. That line hits home, doesn't it? Ultimately, C.S. Lewis is describing a picture of life without hope. A world stuck in a cycle of hardship with no relief in sight. And if we're honest, we've all felt that at some point, haven't we? I think this is such a great moment to just pause, take a breath, and maybe just ask ourselves, what's one situation in my life right now that feels like always winter, never Christmas? Just take a moment. Think that through. What's that thing? Have you got it? Now, what's interesting to me is that this isn't a new feeling, and that is probably pretty obvious. But this isn't a new feeling. You see, when Jesus was born, people were living in a world full of war and chaos and political division and fear and ultimately hopelessness. When Jesus entered the world, it wasn't this picture out of a Hallmark movie at all. No. People were desperate, and they were desperate for hope. And into that darkness, into that world, God gave us His Son. Into that world, God gave us Christmas. The ultimate reminder that even in the darkest winter, there's a reason for hope. You see, Christmas isn't just about lights and gifts and decorations. No, it's about love breaking through the coldest winters of our lives. See, it's through Jesus. Through Jesus, God comes and brings hope to a hopeless world, life to those who are feeling lost, and love to those that are feeling unloved. See, ultimately, guys and ladies, if we miss out on this truth, we'll keep looking for hope in all the wrong places. Money, relationships, achievements. only to ultimately find ourselves still longing. But Jesus comes and offers us hope that's bigger than our circumstances, hope that's rooted in God's unchanging love. See, in Jesus, we find a hope that never fades because He gives us a love that never fails. We struggle, though, to grasp this. Isn't that true? We struggle to grasp this with our human brains because as human beings, we fail each other when it comes to love. Fact. No matter the relationship, there will always be some kind of shortcoming with regards to how we show love and how we experience love. So, we take all of that and we view the love of God through the same lenses. A lens that says, you'll love until it's inconvenient. You'll love until it costs. You will love until it hurts. It was one of Jesus' friends, one of his dear friends, a man by the name of John, who explains to us that God's love is so different. And the way that He demonstrates His love is so different to the way that we demonstrate love. He writes this and communicates it to us in these words, famous words, where He says, "For this is how God loves the world. He gave His one and only Son." He gave His one and only Son. You see, here we see the active, sacrificial love of God. We know that that Son would go on to lay down His life for you and for me and to pay a debt that we couldn't pay on our behalf. You see, God didn't just feel bad for us. He acted and He gave. God didn't just send us a postcard saying, "Hang in there, buddy." No, He gave us His best. He gave us His Son. This, my friends, is love in action. He sent His Son into a broken, cold, and hopeless world to bring light and to bring love and to bring life. He gave us the ultimate gift, His Son, Jesus, the ultimate expression of His love. Not a really good kind of love, no. Not a human love, but perfect love in human form. And this same John who expressed how God comes and loves us, later on in his life, he'd go on to write a couple more letters. And in these letters, in one of them, he would say that God's love demonstrated through Jesus is just that, perfect. It's perfect love. And then he says this, he says, "And perfect love expels all fear." Some translations say perfect love drives out all fear. Perfect love casts out all fear. That's great. I understand the word expels. Perfect love expels all fear. You see, much to my shame, I was a disruptive student. I had some learning difficulties at school that I tried to take the attention off of that, so I became the class clown, became disruptive, and as a result, I have been expelled out of a class or two in my lifetime. In fact, I was expelled from my high school at the end of my grade 9 year. So I've come to learn one or two things about this word, expelled. And here's what I know to be true. When I was expelled, I no longer had the right to be there. Seems pretty simple to me. So I no longer had influence in anyone's life in that class or their learning experience. Peace had been restored, and the kids who wanted to learn had new hope to do so. That's what perfect love does. It strips fear of its rights, and it strips fear of its influence. A perfect love restores peace and brings hope. And that's what the love of Jesus does in your life and in my life when we embrace his love. He strips fear of its rights in our lives. He strips fear of its influence in our lives. His perfect love restores peace and it brings hope. See, fear doesn't stand a chance against perfect love at all. It's kind of like trying to argue with a toddler who's asleep. They don't have any influence. They're out the picture completely. So today, how do I start applying these things to my life? How do I tap into that? Well, I want to encourage you. Identify areas in your life that feel like, man, it's just always winter. Take some time. You can hit pause right now and do it right where you're at. Or when you're done watching this, take some time and just do that. What are those areas that are always winter? Then I want to encourage you to reflect on how God's love shows through in those moments. How God's love shown through Jesus brings light to those moments, to those dark places. Maybe to assist you there, go and just read John 3:16. Just read it a couple of times. Just ask God, man, God, will you just speak to me as to what your love looks like in my life, what it's doing in my life at the moment. And then ask yourself, who in your life needs to hear about this hope? Who in your life needs to hear about this hope? Commit to sharing his love with someone in your life who you know is struggling, or maybe you come into contact with over the next few days and you see, man, they're really struggling. So how do we go about this? Well, this week, choose one specific way to share God's love with someone who feels stuck in a winter. Whether it's through just a simple act of kindness, maybe even just some kind words. Maybe it's an encouraging conversation. Or maybe it's an invitation to come and join you for the next one of these. To maybe pass on the link to a message that you felt impacted your life. To just come and share that love with that person so that they too can find hope. In truth, without us actively engaging in God's love, we stay stuck in the endless winter of our lives. But sharing his love not only helps others, but it also reminds us, it reminds you and me of the hope we have in Jesus. When we live in his love and share his love, we help turn winter into Christmas for others and for ourselves. So as we close off our time together, we see that through Jesus, God brings hope to a hopeless world, life to those feeling lost, and love to the unloved or even just feeling unloved. Christmas is more than lights. It's more than the gifts. It's more than the tree and the tinsel and all the decorations. It's the ultimate reminder that hope is alive. Even in the bleakest winters of our lives, Jesus comes and shows us that it's never just winter, because in Christmas, Jesus has come. It's like the angel said to Mary, "You'll call him Emmanuel, God with us." And he is. So, as we end off this morning, we're going to head into a time of worship. And I so want to just encourage you, don't rush off, but maybe take this time of worship to just let that idea filter through your thinking right now. That God so loved you that he gave you his best. And how can you demonstrate that love to those around you? That he is perfect love, and that perfect love drives out or expels all fear. To utilize this moment to just go, Lord, will you show me the reality of your love, what that means in my life? And at the same time, I pray that right now your love will come and expel all fear and fill me with your hope. So from us here at Grace Family Church, from our family to your family, we just want to wish you a very, very blessed and Merry Christmas.